Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video. I'm going to talk about the comic book industry. I know we don't talk much about comics anymore on this channel because there's really not much to talk about. There's like zero excitement with the mainstream industry anymore. Basically, the shops that are still open are hanging on by their fingertips. A lot of them have pivoted to back issues or graphic novels. There's very, very little excitement in the mainstream comic book industry, especially when it comes to Marvel and DC. And most of the excitement is being sucked up by Skybound these days. And that should not happen. Not that Skybound puts out bad books, but on no planet should licensed toy comics be outselling the entirety of DC Comics. Like, that's just absolutely insane to me. I know that G.I. Joe and Transformers were big for Marvel back in the day, and they were big for IDW to a lesser degree. But now we've got these books pretty much dominating the bestsellers for the direct market. And last year, I think Transformers #1 was actually the biggest book. Bigger than X-Men, bigger than Spider-Man, definitely bigger than Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc., etc. And again, this really just points to the problem with the mainstream comic book industry and why we don't talk much about it is there's very little excitement about it. Now, I am buying these books. I actually do enjoy these books quite a bit. But that being said, they're bringing people into comics that maybe don't normally read comics, people that only follow licensed books or Transformers and G.I. Joe fans, and that's fine. And the books are good. For the most part, they're good. There are a couple that were kind of like, whatever. But most of them are very good. But again, on no planet should these books be bigger than the X-Men. On no planet should these books be bigger than Batman, but here we are. So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, yeah, we'll talk about this, and then we're going to talk about kind of where the comic book industry is just in totality. It's not looking too good. They relaunched the X-Men. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about the relaunched X-Men with like 9 different series. I mean, again, back in the day, the X-Men were the biggest things, the biggest books out there. X-Men events were huge. Jim Lee's X-Men #1, I think, is still the highest selling single issue of a newsstand floppy comic book ever. I think it was like 8 million copies or some crazy number, which is still, compared to manga, is like nothing, but it's very commendable. X-Force sold a ton of copies. Hell, even, House of M back in the day sold a ton of copies, but like there's been no buzz other than bad buzz. And the biggest buzz around the X-Men lately has been X-Men '97. Now there's a whole controversy around that now because of Bo DeMeo. But let's go back to Transformers here. This is coming from Cybertron.com, and we'll go out to ICV2. These are just numbers, and I'm sorry if the numbers hurt your feelings, but this is where we're at, guys. Skybound's Transformers comic book is currently outselling every DC comic book. The Skybound comic is currently beloved by so many fans and critics, so much so that it won the most prestigious awards at the Eisners, the best continuing series, and the best writer-artist. And when it comes to fans, comic shops have had great demand for it. On the latest sales charts for the month of May, the 8th issue of the series outsold every single comic book published by DC in that month. And yes, that includes Batman. Batman. Transformers outsold Batman. Now, I'm sorry, I don't think this reboot is going to help. It was not #1. That goes to Doom, but was a top 5 book. The rest of the top 5 were Spider-Man, X-Men books. We're going to talk about that because X-Men, this is... it's just not good, guys. X-Men should be #1 always, and it isn't. It still got beat by Transformers. Batman was in 7th place, and that's DC's highest selling comic book. This comes from ICV2. Top 50 comics for May 2024. These are unit and dollar sales rankings based on sales tracked at point of sale by the Comic Hub system at stores selling American comics around the world. Again, this is Comic Hub. You have to take our word for it now, right? Hey, bro, this is how many comics we sold. because we don't really know, because nobody's getting all their comic books from Diamond anymore. It's really hard to tell how many comics we're actually selling, right? This is a small non-random sample of over 3,000 stores selling American comics worldwide. I was going to say, I don't think we have 3,000 stores in the U.S. These rankings may not be typical for all stores, but do represent a variety of locations. Data was collected based on a 4-week month from May to June. These sales rankings represent sales to consumers by comic book stores during the period. We're reporting the top 50 comics on the public site and the top 200 on the pro site, so we can get the top 50 here. Yeah, Transformers. And I think G.I. Joe is in here too. I'm sure G.I. Joe's in here. Anything Energon Universe is huge. Deadpool, Cobra Commander, Energon Universe. There it is, guys. I mean, it's just like, how freaking sad. How freaking sad is that? So this is coming from Fandom Pulse. This is John Delarose's site. And I haven't really been following the mainstream comic book industry super close because I've really lost interest. Other than the Energon books, I'm not really picking up any new books these days. And I picked those up because I love Transformers and G.I. Joe, right? And I was following the IDW stuff until it got stupid. You know, and IDW did that to themselves. I'm not saying the Skybound stuff won't also get stupid, but for now, it's doing pretty good. So yeah, they're talking about the sales charts here going forward. This is the gimmick, the same old gimmick that we know, the number ones, collectible covers, you know, et cetera, et cetera. IDW is playing the game with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, getting a milestone 150th issue and relaunching a couple months later with Jason Aaron's #1 first issue. So it's not just the quality of the comics, it's also the games that the publishers are playing to inflate their numbers. Power Rangers, what a kick in the balls that was, right? Like, Boom made a big deal about how they weren't going to do any more Power Rangers comics, and they're like, oh, psych, we're not doing any more in this continuity. We're just going to relaunch it with a brand new #1, guys. We're sorry about that. What, you thought we were ending it? Yeah, people did, because they went on for months about how they were going to end it. The new #1 moved over 300,000 copies, right? They said sales are not reaching the levels they need to survive, though. Overall, in July, Marvel dipped back into the well by relaunching their entire X-Men line, with Gail Simone headlining Uncanny X-Men #1. This should have been a massive hit. Though Marvel Comics doesn't report sales numbers, Phantom Pulse has access to several large retailers that tell a troubling story for comics. The retailers mentioned sales for the relaunch are up over the previous iteration, but that boost from the first issue is not near what they were the last time it was launched. Sales are doing strong numbers, but that's relative to the challenging market we have, one retailer said. This isn't indicative of the quality of the story, as Uncanny X-Men #1 by Gail Simone. It's actually getting positive reviews. Yeah, it's actually getting positive reviews, seriously. It's more of a red flag for the sales gimmicks and reboots, turning fans off who used to love these properties and who have simply given up as the direction of the characters change wildly every time a new creative team comes onto the book. There seems to be no consistency or editorial direction like Marvel once had. There really isn't. There isn't anybody in charge. I actually asked on Twitter, it was a couple of weeks ago, I asked who was in charge of DC Comics, because I'd like to know, because I don't think it's Jim Lee. They had Daniel Cherry III after Dan DiDio, and that's when everything changed, right? Everything became very quote-unquote woke. Everything became quote-unquote woke when he came on board, and he's an activist. He flat out said he's an activist, and like everything overnight, they're just like, yeah, we were, doing pretty okay, and then we're just going to flip it, and now, all right, everybody's LGBTQ now. Even if they had no indicators before that they were. Now they are. And that's what we're going to lead with. And we're going to pump out, pride books. And we're going to make Tim Drake fall in love with his best friend. And, all stuff that's just like, what the hell are you doing? Seriously, just tell people to not buy your books. Just save yourselves the aggravation. Just be like, you know what? We're not even going to print comic books anymore because we know you're not going to buy them. And you know what? We don't want you to. We don't want you to buy our comic books, because we're going to do everything we can do to self-sabotage. We're going to do everything we can do to turn off the traditional audience for comic books. I'm not saying you can't, do more niche projects. I'm not saying that you can't experiment with new characters or whatever. But drag shows in Smallville, really? You know what I'm saying? Like, people are going to look at this. Superman's son being bisexual or gay or whatever, and dating the purple-haired femboy, right? The media is going to run with it as Superman is gay. They're not putting an asterisk next to that and being like, oh no, it's actually Superman's son. You know, that's gay. No, they're going to be like, Superman's gay, and he's an activist now because he's dating an activist, and that's all people see. Normies, that's what they see, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to buy it. And that version of Superman didn't last very long, did it? Now they're doing this whole new reboot, reimagining of the DC characters. And we've got grimdark Superman, and Batman has an axe, and Wonder Woman's probably going to eat more rats. I don't know. I don't care. I like Transformers. I like G.I. Joe. And they went back to basics. It's Transformers and G.I. Joe. All you got to do is give people meat and potatoes sometimes, right? If you want to do something fancier, you can do that. Look at what worked back in the day. You would have your mainline books that were kind of the John Byrne books or whatever. And then you would have, the Vertigo titles or, something like that. Black Label, something like that. You could do more niche things, but like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, X-Men, Spider-Man, they need to be kind of meat and potatoes comics. They're the comics that people come to the shop to buy, and then they buy the other stuff too. But according to Del Rose, it said it also doesn't help books down the line. Spider-Man editor Nick Lowe announced on his X feed recently the new Spider-Woman will be canceled with issue 10, not even making it to a year's worth of content. And more titles are starting to get canceled faster than ever before because the audience isn't there. The audience is not there. You have chased off the normies. The normies are no longer buying your comic books, Marvel and DC, especially DC. They're not buying your comic books. So you have to keep pulling these ridiculous stunts to get people to buy the new #1 with like 50 different variant covers. And that's how you're making up the difference because their corporate overlords, Warner Brothers and Disney, are going to look at them and be like, hey, how much money are you bringing in? Like you're allowed to be left alone as long as you're bringing in money. But they're really not bringing in as much money as they could be under better leadership because I don't think anybody's in charge. I really, truly don't think anybody's in charge over there. Either one of these companies. I think they're just phoning it in. I think these people know that they're just, rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. I know it's a very overused phrase, but that's exactly what they're doing. Because the ship is sinking. We're running out of life rafts. You've got McFarlane making millions of dollars on Kickstarter. You've got some other publishers going out to Kickstarter. You've got people buying back issues. And then you've got, meat and potatoes comics like Energon Universe. All you got to do is just give people a good Transformers and good G.I. Joe comic. They don't have to be great. They just have to be competent. The bar is so low. All you have to do is put out a consistently competent comic book that stays in character every month, and people will buy it if they like that character, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's actually better if you don't reinvent the wheel. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, The Last Ronin, that was the creators' take on it, but like we didn't replace all the turtles with lizards or something, did we? I don't think we did, right? Wes on Thinking Critical, like the last pure comic book YouTube channel left. I think Wes and Perch are like the only two I can think of that cover comics pretty much exclusively. And every thumbnail now, Wes's face he looks so sour. He looks so unhappy because what is he supposed to talk about, right? I mean, you have a channel built around the mainstream comic book industry and reading and enjoying and critiquing mainstream comic books. And there's not much left to talk about, is there? And I think Wes is a DC guy. Like, this has to really hurt, right? According to this article, DC Comics is facing an even bigger sales slump. Wes from Thinking Critical reported that more than 2/3 of the comics are now below what was previously the cancellation line for low sales. The company is losing money on a huge portion of its line before the all-in relaunch. That's the one with Grimdark Superman, I think. By declaring where all the titles would be having a soft reboot, DC Comics has killed the summer sales by alerting readers that their current titles don't matter and storylines would end soon. So many desperate attempts at reboots and restarts, and the sales slump hitting the retailer industry harder than ever before. Despite the gimmick attempts at getting speculators to buy the first issue, it appears as if the comic industry needs to reevaluate its strategies and focus on trying to find readers again, rather than collectors. Why didn't we do this 10 years ago? Why didn't we do this 15 years ago? Why do we have to wait until stage 4 cancer to go to the doctor? You know what I'm saying? And no offense to anybody who went to the doctor and found out that they had cancer, but I'm saying, like, usually by that point, there are signs, there are symptoms, right? And the comic book journalists, the bleeding cools and the comics beats, whatever's left, there's not much left. Those people have spent the last 5-6 years going to war with YouTubers who maybe they weren't as tactful as they could be, but they were calling it out. They said, hey, the industry is hurting. Here's what you can do. Here's what you should not do. And they were mocked, and they were called bigots and Nazis and homophobes, And I'm not saying every reader is a saint, okay? Every YouTuber is a saint. But they were going after retailers like Glenn O'Leary, who just said, I can't sell this stuff because they're turning these beloved meat and potato characters into their own fan fictions. And it's turning off readers. Again, drag shows in Smallville. Why? Why? Tim Drake, gay. Why? No indication ever. You know what I'm saying? Make a new character that's gay. That's all you got to do. Hey, we got a new Robin. He's gay. Okay, that works. New character. That's fine. But we're just going to torch 30 plus years of history of Tim Drake just so we can throw him in the pride issue or something. You know what I'm saying? Little things like that. Kind of a big deal. No continuity. No long-term plans. No editorial cohesion. No editors. Like, who the hell is running the comic book publishers now? I don't think anybody's running the comic book publishers now. Again, Jim Lee's not. And I don't think he was really, I'll be honest, I like Jim Lee. I think he's an amazingly talented artist. I do not think he is an editor. I think you need somebody like a Jim Shooter to come in and be like, look, this is where the bear shits in the woods. We got to make money. This is what we got to do. This is who these characters are. Give them the meat and potatoes. And they'll buy it every month, and then we can get fancy with the other stuff, right? We can have a fancy dessert or something. But your core meal has to appeal to the largest demographic possible. And DC's not doing it, Marvel's not doing it, but apparently, for now, Skybound is, and they're getting the money. It's really not that hard. I mean, if they would go back to basics with X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, take them back to the core tenets of the characters instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, and just give people a solid book every month that isn't going to get rebooted, you'd sell. But you can't do that, right? So I'm going to wrap it up. Please subscribe. We'll talk later.